Hi, I'm Javier,
And I'm Gretchen.
and this is Good Mornings with Sleep Well.
This morning has been an interesting start of the day. I don't know about you, my allergies are kicking my tail.
The wind yesterday had a lot to do with it, and we will be facing a lot of wind today too. Yay, go New Mexico spraying!
Yeah.
Yay!
Well, over here it was so bad. We are surrounded in a basin area, so we have mountains all around us, and the dust was so bad you couldn't see the mountains. That's pretty bad.
That was really bad. Coming back from the Carlsbad store yesterday, we had semis that were on the highway just kind of veering left and right. I'm sure you've all experienced it. Pretty scary times. It's really scary when you are hauling stuff in the back of the truck and it really pushes along. So yeah, New Mexico winds are dangerous, so be careful out there. We have a couple of things that we have some exciting stuff that we're doing in Carlsbad, don't we?
We sure do. We are now proud owners of a second store in Carlsbad. It's a huge store, which is slightly different than the one we're in now. This is a smaller store focused primarily on sleep. We have the mattresses, we have power bases, bedding, anything to associate to your room. But now our Carlsbad store is a house venture because it's a full-fledged furniture store. It's 10,000 square feet. And it's in the heart of Carlsbad, and we couldn't be more excited.
It's going to be an adventure filling that thing up. So far, we've teamed up with great brands like Acme and Coaster.
Sutherland.
We've brought in the Sutherland line. We've brought in Wellsville, which is a carbon cool bed. We've got a lot of exciting merchandise over there. We're working on a full bedding department, which will be in our Carlsbad store, and we're going to be having a full bedding department in our Alamogordo store. So we look forward to that. Just plenty of adventure.
Yes, and with that bedding department, we're going to pull in a new decorations line as well. So you won't be limited again to just the bedding for mattresses and that such. You'll also have decorative pillows and different decorative items you can place around your house. So they'd be great accents for your entire household instead of one limited area.
Yep, and I was in the Carlsbad store yesterday, and we have our first vignette set up. We are working on 4 others. But the first vignette's already set up and it's already made an impact. I actually had 2 customers walk in and they were shopping around, but they also saw the vignette, and we've already got our first post to Instagram. I spent a couple of hours yesterday afternoon looking for the tag or whatever she tagged it, but I know that she did tag it to Instagram and she also Snapchatted it. So we're looking forward to that being like a big thing for social media for us. We've set up a really pretty vignette right now. We've got some other themes going on. It's pretty exciting times. Pretty exciting.
And with that has got a super stove for market coming up in July. So decorations, those are right up my alley. I love to decorate, so I am super stoked to go and challenge market this year and see what I can find.
Yep, so we're looking forward to that. And then also yesterday was tax day. Woo!
Boo.
Yeah. I actually I'll confess to being one of the procrastinators. I just barely got my taxes done on Friday. And let me tell you, I was in for the shock of my life because, my bookkeeper doesn't need constant input. So I was emailing, texting, taking care of business while I'm at her desk, and she just asked the occasional question. Well, I look up, and on the corner of her screen says I owe $39,000, which was pretty darn scary. So, yeah, I had to text her and let her know that I needed my heart back because that was pretty bad. So what are we talking about today on today?
Today we are going to be discussing how much sleep does your child need? It seems to be a very dismissed subject anymore. People are more along the lines of setting our children up for society and school learning and activities and sports, and everything is functioned around their activity life. But when it comes to the recycling of your mind's sake, it's completely forgotten. The whole sleep patterns of children are so erratic nowadays, and I don't think as adults we really realize how much impact it does have on our children.
While doing research on the blog, and you'll see the blog post on the Sleep Well News and blog, while doing research, it was really, really shocking to find that 45% of Americans are lacking in sleep. Mm-hmm. And lacking in sleep is defined as anything less than 7 hours. So 6.5, that counts, and a lot of Americans are actually sleeping less than even 6.5. We've watched the CBS News where there was a sleep expert on there, and they took a week with a Fitbit, and they measured their sleep, and the average sleep for the entire news desk, which is 4 people, was I believe 4.5 hours.
Yeah, actually, Nora, I think people know Nora pretty good. She's Oprah Winfrey's best friend.
No, that was Gail.
Oh, Gail. Gail, excuse me. She had stated the fact that she had, what was it, 3.5 hours?
3.5 hours. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're like, you're functioning?
Yeah, yeah, and so when you gauge that with what we're doing to our kids, it's pretty bad. So one of the main things that I found in research for children was that they're sleeping anything less than 7 hours for a child is really detrimental to their mind and brain development. Their social skills suffer from it, and if you're talking school-age kids, anybody sleeping less than 8 hours, any child sleeping less than 8 hours, their grades really suffer. They have an issue concentrating, and that leads a lot to doctors thinking that it's ADHD. So we have kind of an epidemic where there's less child sleep, but we also have an epidemic where doctors aren't asking about the sleep. They're actually prescribing more medicine than is probably necessary. And we as parents are really kind of letting that fall. We should pay attention more to our child's sleep patterns if we expect development and we want to help them grow.
You know, and it also falls through whenever they have to really focus and narrow in and retain information. The focusing factor comes in. I know whenever I feel very tired in the morning, it's very hard for me to focus on little things. I tend to forget things. And I've noticed that here and there, especially with everyday pattern things that you never think about doing because it's so ritual. When you're tired, you can actually forget. And when children are at school and they're forced to focus, change classes, they don't have adequate PE like they used to. It's usually like once or twice a day. Their focusing time has just doubled. It used to be that, kindergarten was a half-day session because they realized at that age, children just don't have the ability to focus for long periods of time. And now kindergarten is pretty much normal, a full day. So even starting at younger ages, we are putting so much more on our children, and having that focusing time is so important for them now, especially now that they're in the electronics world and they're learning very quickly and they're exposed to so much. When it comes for them to be able to cram for their studies and stuff like that of their semester tests and stuff, even in high school and in mid-school, those are the times when they might lack sleep. But that's also when it's most important because they have to have that full focus and be able to pull memory and this, that, and the other in order to adequately do well on their testing.
There was a study done on college kids for their cramming and whatnot. If a student crams all night and doesn't get enough or adequate sleep that night before, everything that they've studied the night before is gone. And that's because during sleep your brain actually replays and retains information. So the best case is the day before a big test. Take that day to study and then sleep fully that night and then take the test. That's one thing. Another thing that we came up with on the research was babies. Babies that don't get enough sleep don't get brain development. I mean, you're talking actual brain development. Their memories and social interactions as a child with their mom and with their dad or with relatives or whatnot, all of that is actually, their little brain is a sponge. And if they don't get enough sleep, they don't retain any of that.
Isn't it like 14 to 16 hours infants are required a day?
Yeah, and I actually include that chart in the in the blog. And you're right, 14 to 17 hours, with 18 to 19 hours being the high side for a newborn. Infants are 12 to 15 hours, toddlers are 11 to 14. You've got your preschoolers at 10 to 13 hours, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, 10 to 13 hours. So we need to pay attention to that too. School-age kids anywhere from 9 to 11 hours. Teens, here's one. Teens, 8 to 10 hours. That surprised me.
Yeah, I still remember back in the day where I would try to sleep in on those Saturdays, but I'm such a morning person. I ritually just wake up, whether I'm tired or not. My brain says awake. And trying to sleep in, if I tried to, I always ended up with headaches and stuff, so I wasn't one of those. But my brother, holy cow, my sister too, they could sleep till noon. And I was like, how do you do that? But the whole brain flushing process and the recycling that your
Hmm.
brain is required to have in order to operate and function and retain is just that. I mean, when your children really do say they need sleep, they need sleep.
Hmm. Hmm.
Another thing I want to point out when it comes to children with ADD or ADHD, I think a lot of people get confused in the sleeping patterns they may have versus what their awake status is. I think when we think about when we are exhausted, our first thing we do is get moody. We don't retain information very well.
We
We're
slow
very,
down. We slow down.
yes,
Hmm.
slow down. We're very just irritated to a circumstance of wanting to sleep. With children, they react the opposite. They start getting a lot louder. They can't focus on anything because they're pinging.
A lot more rambunctious. Yes.
Yes. And I do believe that if doctors would focus on sleep patterns for children that are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, that there might be a huge connection there.
Yep. Yep.
Attention deficit disorder, when you're a teacher and you have a student load of 25 to 30 students and you have one child who's not getting enough sleep, it impacts the entire classroom.
Hmm.
It makes her job twice as hard because not only does she have to retain focus for the one child who can't focus, she's trying to keep that disruption pattern from becoming an interruption to the other children in the room who's trying to learn.
Right.
So,
And a lot of parents actually blame that behavior on sugar as well. But if you really boil it down, a lot of it has to do with the child's sleep patterns. So basically, what we're asking, or what we're kind of saying with the research that's been done here, is look at your child's sleep pattern. Pay attention to, are they sleeping enough? Are these behaviors kind of falling in place with a sleep deprivation pattern? And give it a shot. Give it a shot. Set them with a set bedtime. Take away the electronics before the bedtime. Which, by the way, we're going to cover blue light in one of the blogs here in the coming weeks. But set a bedtime and take away the electronics. Take away the TV. Read a bedtime story to them. That's important. Reading to the child, and then just let them fall asleep during this time, and have a set wake up time, and see how the behavior changes. And I think that you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at their grades. You'd be surprised at their social interactions, and you'd be surprised at their overall growth. So, yeah, we definitely encourage you to read the blog. There's also a whole lot of references down at the bottom that we source. So please look into the blog and see what you can do for your child.
I can say just one part before we close. When you're talking about working with children without electronics, I think our society has become so dependent on electronics that it's actually become a babysitter to a certain circumstance. And I do believe there's a time and place for it, and every parent has their own way of raising children. But when it comes to sleeping time, there should be a cutoff that lets their mind and everything just calm down and go into those phases needed so that they can fall asleep. And one of the best things I found is reading. And if your child doesn't want you to read to them, have them read to you. My 11-year-old is great at that. She'll come in with her books, and right before 30 minutes before bedtime, she'll come and we'll just lay there on the bed, and she reads to us. And from there, she's actually grasped better reading skills. She's getting bigger words, better vocabulary, asking questions when need be. Not only that, it's great interaction. A lot of our humanity has lost the ability to conversate because we've become so static to texting and computer conversations through email, and that lack of people contact has really suffered. And I can see with my daughter that she's definitely the opposite. She doesn't know strangers. She can conversate with anybody, very outgoing. So social skills are not a hindrance there, but that social interaction will play off well for them in their sleep patterns as well, because they're already calm and ready for sleep when you send them to bed.
All right. Well, thank you, and we appreciate it. And just remember, this topic is covered in the Sleepwell blog. It's also covered on our social media, so you can find us at the Sleepwell Facebook page, and it's Sleepwell Mattress and Bedding. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. And until next time,
Thank you for joining us.
and remember, when you sleep well, you live well.
Bye bye.